So I'll give a short introduction just to set a common ground and like give you a short overview of what we have done in the previous years. So because that's more or less where the things we're going to discuss together today come from. So yeah, the thing you see there, yeah. So actually, we were thinking back in these days where this research we are dealing with started, and we somehow think that started from this project that we made was like 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, which is called the Digital Dump. It was a web-based project in where people could collect their trashed files on the web on this digital dump. And so once that you throw your digital files in the dump, those files will become available for public use. And the thing there, the aim in there was to investigate how to deal with already used artifacts, already used projects. And the thing was how projects and images, text, everything that already has its own aesthetic, its own form somehow, could generate new aesthetic once that you start building upon. So that was the main idea about recycling old files and see if this recycling attitude would lead to new aesthetic and to new visual forms, which is something that we somehow care about. I mean, we are quite interested in research on how find new visual languages, especially starting from something that wasn't exactly meant for that, which leads to this other project that we developed quite a few years ago as well, which is called Chromancia. It's a Chrome extension that is actually meant to turn the browser into a VJ tool. So the browser, which is normally used to browse the internet, with this extension somehow becomes some sort of VJ software. I'll give you a brief demonstration and then we see the video. So what you can basically do is to browse the internet and visit every web page, and if you have the extension installed, then you can do all sort of tricks over the web page, and yeah, that's more or less the thing. And yeah, and the idea is that you can actually use it for live performances. So just put what you see here is a visual performance based on the Ryanair website. And yeah, the interesting part is that that site already has its own graphic design project, its own aesthetic. And what you do with this extension is that you apply a new layer on top. So you have certain things that are already there that somebody else has decided, and you basically try to apply a new layer on top. So you mix things that were decided by someone else with things you actually designed, which I think could lead to some interesting results, and which I think are somehow relevant to this new so-called web aesthetic we are trying to introduce today. And yeah, this is more of our one more. I think the funny thing in this case was that we had some raw material that was somehow structured as a web page, so you could apply this extension to every web page, because all the web pages shared more or less the same structure. I mean, they are not all the same, but they somehow shared the elements that build up the web page. So starting from these common things, you can apply stuff on top, and there are things that you control because you define the changes, but there are things that you cannot control because somebody else has placed them there. And this thing about controlling and not controlling things on the internet, I think it's somehow the main thing that is aiming to this is building up this new web aesthetic. Apart from that, I mean, these were more of our experimental projects. Apart from that, we do normal websites, and we, as I said before, we actually try to understand what people want to do with those websites. So the funny thing is that when you start discussing the project at the beginning, you ask if they want to update their website or if they don't want. And one thing we noticed was that they always want to be able to update their websites, but they never do it because I mean, they prefer to have a new website that you update for them compared to being able to update their own website. So that's something that somehow made ourselves think about the way people relate to contents on the internet. Then the last aspect from our profession that was somehow tickling something was that we started to work with like traditional advertising agency, and nowadays everything is moving to the social network sphere. So I mean, every campaign has to be done in there, has to engage the consumers, and they ask the consumers to produce more contents that will become part of these new commercials. Actually, the funny thing is that they ask for new contents, and the fact is that they actually care just about the fact that the content will be produced and not about the content itself, which I think it's somehow interesting in this new era of social produce and social contents and user generated contents. So that's more or less the introduction to where I come from and all the little things that somehow are going together to build this research that I'd like to share with you today. I hope it's not gonna be boring. And initially we wanted to be more somehow more technical and somehow to investigate how to change the form of these contents, how to treat this content visually. But in these days, in these months, I think we got closer to analyze how these contents are generated and the behaviors that are behind the generation of this content. So I think it's going to be more conceptual somehow, and as I had the chance to say before, we are gonna open up a few questions, and we are not gonna give any answer. I hope you don't mind that. And yeah, I'll start with the real thing. Okay, so here we are. So that's a pretty interesting statistic that comes from this report called the New Mainstream, and done by this agency, London-based agency, which is called Wolf Ollins, which is a brand agency. In this report, they look at.
Can I do it full screen, by the way?
Yes.
Right inside.
Not
Okay.
really. Better. It's the
And
head.
now the green one maybe.
Better, huh? So, what they're doing here is to look at the creation of contents uh, by the user. Actually, it's we could argue about this report because it's really focused on the brand. It takes the part of the brands and look how brands should again engage more the consumers as users. We are not gonna do that. The interesting part is that the percentage of content creators raised from 7% in 2006 to 77% in 2013, which means that nowadays, more or less, everyone is actually producing contents over the internet. I mean, with the rising of social networks, everyone turned to be some sort of reader, to be a creator, a producer of content. We already mentioned that these contents are actually they are for the content themselves. The fact that they exist uh, is even more important than what is content in there. But yeah, the fact is that nowadays more and more contents are there on the social network. We have this bunch of content in there. Uh, this fact is also important because somehow people and companies that are actually using the internet just through the social network. I mean, you as if you try to remember the first stage, the first era of the internet, there were all these websites, small websites spread around, and everyone was able to somehow communicate himself. Now we have this somehow predefined structure that are the social network and the formats that social networks gives you. And a lot of people, a lot of companies are actually nowadays moving everything just to the social network. I mean, we build less and less websites and we build more and more Facebook pages or Twitter pages because that's you have a structure in there, you have a network in there, and you can actually rely on something that the social network provides you. Uh, we are not gonna go into the ethical side of it for the moment, but I'd like to point out the fact that this aspect radically changed the content themselves. I mean, with the social network, we have seen many different formats coming out, many different frame of contents, many different structure of contents. I was in Brno like a few days ago for the graphic design biennale, and there was this art piece, design piece, whatever you want to call it, that was called Abandoned Letterhead, and they were showing these several piles of letterheads, like proper corporate letterheads. And the funny thing is that nowadays we just don't do letterheads anymore because we write less and less letter. I mean, I remember from high school they were trying to teach somehow how to write a proper letter, and that format, that structure of content is becoming less and less important because somehow I see that new formats are rising. These new formats somehow I can somehow see how they demand for new let's call layout, new aesthetic in order to better communicate those contents. I mean, if the content change, you somehow have to change the container to better present this content. So what we are curious in these days is how to actually deal with these contents, and how to what are the different aspects that these new formats pop out. So we said that we have many contents available out there, and what we are trying to do is okay, now we have all these contents, what do we do with them? I mean, is there any opa, just change it. We have all these contents. How can we deal with them? I mean, what is possible to do with them? And what are the way that social networks are developing in order to distribute this content? The thing is that you can actually pull out this content from the social network, and in order to do that, you have somehow to deal with the social network itself. So what we have seen these days is that somehow the social networks themselves still don't know how to distribute these contents. I mean, if you try to work with these contents, you see that the way they distribute these contents keep on changing on a monthly basis, and apparently, which is pretty bad for developers, but we are not gonna go into that for now. And but still, apparently, is that the impression I have is that they know there's this issue that you can actually pull the content out, but they don't know how to properly distribute them. The general tendency is somehow rising in these days is that they try to heavily brand the content that you take from them. So with this thing involved the fact that they gives you this branded container that contain, for example, all your Facebook status or all your Twitter tweets, and you get them in this nice shiny box with the Twitter logo on top, and you can put it wherever you want. The thing in this is that what it's actually the content you are taking. Is it the tweet itself, or is the tweet within the container? I mean, you try to you get this box with the tweet inside, but you can't get rid of the box. So the box itself, shall I? Yeah. Here's the way. I mean, there's the screen where you can get the so-called Twitter widget, and this is how it's going to look like. Okay, so you have the nice birds in there, and you have the bird in there, and everything is marked as belonging to Twitter. So the thing is, the first question is, okay, now we have this box, now we have this branded box, we want to put it somewhere else. How do we do that? That's the thing. And so far we have seen two different approaches, and one way we have tried in the past, which is really somehow hard to maintain, is to try to somehow get rid of the box. So you have this box with the tweets inside, and you start digging in the box in order to get the tweet out and to replace the tweet somewhere else, which is something that we tried to do in this project, which was a personal website for a designer. And what we did was we took all the contents of the website from different social network profiles, from Instagram or Pinterest or Twitter, and we tried to get rid of all these boxes I was mentioning. Which is somehow interesting because, as I said, the meaning of the content you are taking really depends on the context of the content, if you forgive the pun. And once that you have a picture on Pinterest, for example, it has a specific meaning because it belongs to Pinterest. Once that you get rid of the container and you re-go back to the original picture, it has a completely different meaning. What we tried to do here was to, starting from this bunch of social network contents, to rearrange them in order to get rid of the meaning they have on the social network and to give them a new meaning based on the new context, which is something we did here, and we somehow tried to did on this other project, which was crossing again contents from Twitter together with contents from Google Images. So based on keywords, we were it was a workshop we did with students. Based on keywords, we were crossing different contents with different predefined topic. The idea in this case is that you can actually generate these new meanings based on this bunch of contents that I mentioned before that are nicely organized by people, because you have hashtags on Twitter, so you actually know what that piece of text was meant to mean. Also with Google Images picture or with Pinterest picture, someone said this picture is about this, so you can somehow get the topic, cross with something else, and see if it still works. I mean, the nice thing I can somehow see with this bunch of content in that is that there somehow someone behind them that assigned them some sort of meaning, and you can actually automatically somehow get that meaning and use it for your own purpose. This kind of approach is really hard to maintain because, as I said, social networks don't know what to do with this contents, and technically this mean that the technical specification that they gives you to embed these contents on your platform, on your websites, keep on changing. So I'm showing a picture of these websites because if you go now online and browse this website, it's completely screwed up. Because Twitter changed the API and Pinterest did as well, and so on. So everything was crafted in order to work at that specific time, and after a few months you would have to go back there and check again the specification and everything. So, and also this lead to the thing I mentioned before, that they are really trying to brand their content. So yeah, one of the question we have is, as I said before, what is this content anyway? I mean, what is a Facebook post? Is it a text that happened to be on Facebook, or is a text belonging to Facebook that has its own meaning because it's in there together with other things, and you can actually like it or comment on it, or you know what I mean, right? Somehow. So this led to a second approach, which I think it's somehow even more interesting than this, and is to actually, which I think is particularly relevant to this, what I call this new web aesthetic, and is just to deal with the container they give you. So they give you this shiny box, and you deal with the shiny box. And the thing is that you somehow have to embed this thing. I mean, you want that content is there. You want to use it because it's meaningful. And but on the other hand, you have this sort of fight rising up about in between the social network that want their content because it's there at a certain point to to be evident once that you post it somewhere else, and uh, once that you have this widget we saw before, uh, they want it to be immediately recognizable as belonging to Twitter. And what you want to do if you are some sort of web graphic designer, artist, and is to actually what I think it's interesting is to use these containers they give you as some sort of raw material and try to deal with the things that you have, with the aesthetic, with the form that they give you in order to build a new one, to build on top, as we somehow saw on the other projects I show, in order to get something else. Still with me? Cool. And yeah, last thing I want to mention is that basically what we have tried to do, we as graphic designer, as creative people behind the internet, was to somehow apply to the internet, to web pages, to websites, everything we learn from other medium, such as print, such as video in some cases. While in these days, I think the time is somehow mature enough to for the rising of this new aesthetic, which belongs to that medium, and it's just it belongs only to that medium. We already mentioned some of the most important aspects to me, at least. That is this somehow loss of control. I mean, we give up control in there because there are too many things to take in consideration. I mean, the web itself was born as some sort of unpredictable medium, because you don't know in which support you're going to see it. You don't know in these days. You don't know if your web piece is going to be seen on a smartphone or a tablet or whatever. Where it's going to be seen, if it's on a train or in the street or at home. And so we already had some of this loss of control, which was basically on the shape, on the support itself. What I can see nowadays from this social network and this user-generated content thing is that we somehow have to give up as well on the form of the content, on the aesthetic of the content, and try to build a new one, a more interesting one that will take in count even smaller pre-made artifacts. Makes sense to you?
So you're taking the next complexity step towards from the, if you cannot control the box, you basically build onto the box.
Yeah, I mean, if you have this box and you can't get rid of the box, you can take the content out of the box. You deal with the box and you deal with all the thing that the box carries with it, its size and its color, its dimension, and you just accept the box as part of the thing, and you somehow make the box to fit comfortable within everything else. And I think, I mean, one important aspect that I've seen in web design, web aesthetic, was that somehow designers and always tried to get more and more control over the medium, over the form of the medium. They wanted to make pixel precise websites, which I think at this point doesn't even make sense anymore. I mean, you have so many things, so many variations, so many variables that you just give up on them and try to take advantage of these variations. I mean, you don't try to make the web looking like something else. You just treat the web as the web, with its bad sides and good sides as well.
Can we start early? I'm asking in between.
Yeah.
What you're just saying is basically once upon a time you had this this ability to fit content to different browsers, to different tablets, to different screens. But nowadays it's basically it got too many. So therefore you basically take the next step that you cannot even fit them to all different possibilities in all different contexts.
Yeah, I mean, what I found funny on in a way and interesting on the other one was that, I mean, you are going to see websites on all these different devices and situations, but you're always going to see the website only on one device per time, you know. So you just make the thing, the web page, the web piece, whatever you want to call it, to work on all of them, but you somehow give up on the fact that you simply cannot control everything, and it's even not the interesting part. I mean, being able to place that picture or that image or that typeface in there, I think it's simply not really the point. I mean, there are so many interesting aspects that are specific of the web, such as the fact that you could, gather things together. You can get, as I said, tweets, you can get YouTube videos, and you can put together things. So it's not about the right color or the fact that the color should look the same on your smartphone and on your desktop, because it simply can not. You don't know. It's not like picking up a Pantone color. So you just do something else, and you I think now, especially because the situation is so complex. I mean, especially because there are so many possibilities involved, that you can actually start to see which are the real potential of the medium from a formal point of view. I mean, I'm not even talking about the networks or the fact that you can connect to people. I mean, we know that. I'm saying that I can somehow see that in the first era of the internet, we have technical limitations, so we just couldn't do things. Then we had this. Then we started to have more and more control. We invented the CSS, and we invented we separate. I make it in a Bible sort of. And we separate form from contents because it was easier to maintain, and because it was the right way to do it. Then we added font face and web font because we wanted to have more and more, let's say, ways to personalize the aspects. But now, I mean, we have even, I mean, now that we have the CSS, we have the HTML, but now we have to embed something that has its own CSS, if you know what I mean, its own form. So what do we do with that? This separation, it's not even there anymore. It's again mixed together. So I think now we can start to see interesting things from an aesthetic point of view that are specific to that medium, to the fact that you have different formats, to the fact that you have contents from different people, that you have organized content already there available that you could somehow use, that will lead to something else. It's somewhere, it's somehow coming from generative sort of things, programmed graphics, but it involves something else, because you have um, the internet, you have the browser, and you have the people in there. Does it make sense? Some sort of.